Welcome to The Leadership We Need Now, a space where we talk about compassionate leadership. We talk about leading with courage and empathy and care. I'm Stacey Dye, and I have been a nonprofit director for over 20 years. I am also a strategist and an executive coach. Today, I want to talk about understanding yourself as a leader and understanding others. This is one of the few things that I think is pretty standard when we talk about leadership. This is something that in corporations, large corporations, in small organizations, in community work, this is so important in how we show up and how we lead. These are things that we can always improve on. These are things that we can always do better. But this is a start for you to really take logistical steps in making sure that you understand yourself as a leader, but then also understanding the people around you. So first I'll start with understanding yourself. This starts with things like taking assessments, understanding your astrology sign, understanding your love language, understanding whether it's Myers-Briggs, a strength finder, whether it's Working Genius, understanding those things that make you tick, why you do the things you do. This is a way for you to kind of also look at things, kind of check things off a list where you look at your personality, the way you like to see things, the way you like to work, the things that bring you joy. You can look at that and see, are you utilizing and utilizing your tools and your gifts and minimizing the things that are your frustrations or that you're not quite good at. And so as you look at that and you start to develop a bigger picture of the person you are, that also includes things like reading books, reading about the things that really, when you read something, I think about books that I read that I tab or highlight where I feel like it really resonates with me, that type of leadership, that type of style, or an experience that someone else has had that I can translate into something that I'm experiencing. And so understanding yourself is the best single tool I think you can ever have in your life. And that doesn't excuse bad behavior. That doesn't excuse the fact that you might not want to work or do these things. Sometimes you have to do the things you're not good at. Sometimes you have to do the things you don't love. Most of the time you do, sometimes too. But there's also looking at it and saying, am I in the right position? Am I doing the right things? Am I making these decisions based on all of these factors? Or am I making it from like a higher level of thinking? And so when you look at this and understand yourself better, you are able to show up different. For example, I know that when I walk into certain situations, I am a much better big thinker. I like to strategize. I like to think of all the ways that this could affect others. I like to do, see the forest through the trees. With that, I know when I go into community groups or go into partnerships or relationships, I want to be able to bring those tools because that brings me joy too. The excitement, the energy, the creativity, the invention, I love that piece. And so having me as a part of a team where I can lean into that is really important. And so as you do the work that you're doing, as you show up in your offices, as you're managing people, understanding yourself and your gifts and things that you really love to do is so important in not only how you design the work that you're doing, but then how you communicate with others, how you share your gifts, how you share your joys with others, and being very transparent about that in your communication. And so once you can start to figure out, because it is never a completed process to understand yourself, because you change, the world changes, your life changes, what you did or what you felt like before you had kids or before you were married or before you lost someone that you love or before you moved or before you changed jobs. those may be different times in your life where you felt a different way about things. And so understanding who you are in this moment is so important. I think when you expand that in a leadership role, you are, and actually in every role, because even if you're not the leader, you are a team member, you are a partner, you are a family member. And so taking the idea of like understanding yourself and utilizing that in your communication with others, but then also trying to understand them, trying to understand their perspective, where they're coming from, their lived experience, what they're dealing with every day is going to be the game changer in how you build strong teams, how you produce good work, how you really build community, because everybody wants to feel valued and appreciated for their gifts and talents. Everybody wants to feel included into things. Everybody wants to have purpose and feel like they're living a purpose-driven life. And so when we're looking at the work that we're doing in nonprofits specifically, you are working with so many different people, whether that's your team, your fellow employees, whether that's volunteers, whether that's board members, whether that's families that you're serving or people that you're serving, whether that's donors. You are constantly navigating your relationships with others. And so making sure, A, that you understand yourself and how that can translate with your relationship to others, but then taking a step further and understanding others and how they like to work and what things drive them. And that is part of the relationship building. That is part of really being concerned, not about just having more like a top-down model where it's like, I tell you what to do and therefore you do it, but understanding their perspective, where they are in their life. If someone is 5 years from retirement, they will have a different perspective than someone who is just starting out in their career. Someone with young children may have a different perspective or different ability to come to the table than someone in high school, or a child in high school. So looking at it and understanding what people can give, but then also what they are experiencing will change how you manage them. And I'm not saying that you have to modify your management style for every different personality, every different need or want of every employee group, volunteer, donor, whatever. But you do need to understand that the way that you show up, meeting with the way they show up, causes a certain chemical reaction, right? Just like a chemical experiment. You have two different ingredients coming together, you will have different results. And so if you understand them and they can understand you better and you understand yourself, that gives you an opportunity to kind of start out on a strong foundation for the work. That doesn't mean everybody's going to get along. That doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect in a workplace or at home or anything else. But understanding each other and then walking through leadership with compassion and understanding will give you the opportunity to lead in a different way. Lead with confidence, lead with your heart in a different way. I think this also translates into the stories that we tell and the way that we navigate our advocacy, the way that we look at telling our story and communicating our needs. This is really important, not just for your smaller individual personality and needs. So being able to communicate your needs to your family or to your partner or to your friends, but being able to communicate your needs because you understand yourself and you understand them, being able to communicate that more clearly to donors or funders or partners out in the community. If you understand their perspective and you understand them and you understand yourself, you can understand how to marry the situation, marry the proposal, marry the relationship in a different way. And so as nonprofits, we're really taught to focus on the work, on the needs, on the issue. But we really are these human souls working and trying to help. So when you have a group of helpers, when you have a group of people who are committed to a life of service, it is a different level of understanding. When you're working in the nonprofit field, if you have people in recovery, you handle their recovery in a different way. If you have people who are victims of crime and that are working in this field, you handle that situation in a different way. And so as we're thinking about this, there's so many layers of understanding each other and why people do the things they do, how we can work together better, why we say the things we do, why we show up the way we do. And so if you can better understand yourself, better understand others, we can start to get above that. We can start to get to a place where we create and invent really amazing things, where we start to advocate as a collective, when we start to tell the story in a way that is meaningful to us, but also meaningful to others, and people will resonate with the issue. We can start to think above just, a siloed organization doing well, but how do we as communities, how do we as a collective do well? How do we rise with the tide together? And I think that, yes, we need to understand the bigger picture, but it starts with understanding the humans involved. And again, whether that's employees, whether that's team members, whether that's community donors, board, whatever it is, understanding each other and working from a place, again, with compassion, empathy, understanding, and courage, we can then step forward and do the bigger things. We can lead in uncertain times. We can support and connect with each other when and as often and as frequent as we need. We can also really step into this moment where uncertainty and fear is prevalent, and we can support each other and figure out ways to move forward through these times, and also ways to survive these times. And so for me, this is, an act of my moment of stepping into something uncomfortable, of doing something different, of talking to people on a screen from my perspective versus having the communication and the connection of a real live audience, which is where I feel the most at home, is having the conversations face to face, where I can understand the way people feel and the way they think and the way they talk about something. And so I'm stepping out of my comfort zone so that we can start to have these conversations and start to build this community. And that not only the things I'm sharing, but the things that leaders from across other communities are experiencing can share will really change the way we not only think about our work and the way we're doing things, to know that we're not alone, and to know that there are tools, there are tips that we could take from each other and learn from each other, especially those of us in rural communities, those of us that don't have access to resources. And, it pretty much is small amounts of people doing large amounts of work. And so how does this type of leadership move forward? I think it is the future of leadership. I think talking about how these things affect us personally, how these things affect us emotionally, and talking about the courage to lead with compassion and understanding and have that be our power is the way of the future. And so if you wouldn't mind subscribing to this station, sharing it, comment, like it, whatever you can to share the message, it's going to be important in us being able to share our messages to each other and to a larger audience. And so I appreciate you, I'm grateful for you, and know that this is tough work, and that I'm not saying it's easy or that these are solutions to check off a box. I'm saying that these are just pieces of the puzzle, and that you were meant for this moment, and the people around you were meant for this moment, and we need you at your best, and to understand yourself so you know what you can bring forward to move us into the future. So thank you, and we'll talk soon.